فسوف يحاسب حسابا يسيرا. صدق الله العلي العظيم. صلوات الله.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين، والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا ونبينا خاتم النبيين بالقاسم محمد. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد وآله الطيبين والطاهرين والمعصومين وصاحب المنتجبين وعلى جميع الأنبياء والمرسلين. Dear sisters and brothers, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Begin by giving our salam to Sayyida Fatima Zahra. Assalamu alayki ya Fatima Zahra, Sayyidata al-Nisa'i al-Alameen. Ya Fatima. I don't know what to say about this great role model, this personality. Just to say even a word of her greatness, it'll take, I don't know, days to even talk about her. And I was reading this book by Dr. Ali Shariati, and in the beginning of his book, he's put some excellent points for us brothers and sisters to follow her as a role model. Some people say she's a role model for women. The Prophet was a role model for men. Say the Fatima as a woman. I say no. She's a role model for all of mankind. What she went through, the struggle she went through, what she did, we can never imagine how much she went through. But she's an example for us to follow. So there's one dua I love when I hear it, is dua tawassul. And so if we can recite together the tawassul of Sayyida Fatima Zahra and have her intercede and pray for us as we ask the Prophet to pray for us. And some people say, brother, there's no intercession in Islam. These people haven't read the Quran. Come on, open the Ayatul Kursi. It all talks about intercession. Shafa. And Allah will give the permission to who He wills. And if you tell me the Ahlul-bayt are not going to be intercessors for us, there's something wrong with us. Because what does it say in Quran? Who are the purified? Ahlul-bayt. إِنَّمَا يُرِيدُ اللَّهُ لِيُذْهِبَ عَنْكُمَ الرِّجْسَ أَهْلَ الْبَيْتِ وَيُطَهِّرَكُمْ تَطْهِيرًا. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali. The Prophet said, do you know who these people are of my Ahlul-bayt? It's me, my daughter Fatima, it's her husband Ali, and her two sons Hassan and Hussein. So let's do the dua of dua tawassul, just of Sayyida Fatima. Ya Fatima Zahra, Ya binta Muhammad, Ya Qurrat al-Ain al-Rasul, Ya Hujjatullahi ala khalqi, Ya Sayyidatana wa Mawlatina, Inna tuwajjahna واستشفانا وتوسلنا بك إلى الله وقدمناك بين يدي حاجاتنا يا وجيها عند الله اشفعي لنا عند الله يا وجيهة عند الله اشفعي لنا عند الله. With that, brothers and sisters, let's jump into the heart and soul where Islam shook. And it happened the day the Prophet died. The day within hours of his death was destruction in the Muslim world. Some people say it was in Karbala, but it all began right after the Prophet left. And what they did to the Ahlul-bayt, the one that Allah has purified, we can't even imagine. So we'll look at Sayyida Fatima's life a little bit, because today is the day of her death. But it's enough to say, okay, I heard the stories for 20 years, 30 years, 40 years. What have we done about it? What are we doing about it? What's next for me? What do I need to do to follow her? And inshallah, we're going to have some other brothers and sisters to get involved, and we'll talk about the problems we're going through. You know, there's so many issues you guys are going through in school, the peer pressure, going on dates and doing things that you don't want to do, but just the pressure is getting to you. And your desires are tough, and it's not easy to control. And to channel it in a halal way and getting married, people say, don't get married young, come on. This is not the time. Sow your wild oats, they talk about. I don't want to even tell you what that means if you don't know. It's just, they don't care about morality. They don't care about modesty. They just want you to just destroy and have fun. And that's not the life of Sayyidah Fatima Zahra. We need to go back to the purity of her life. But let's look at what Allah says in Quran. Our brother just read a beautiful part of Surah chapter 84. He read one ayat. Ya ayyuhal insanu innaka kadihun illa rabbika kadhan famulakin. Who can tell me what that means? Allah's asking us to do something. He says, oh man, surely you must strive. He wants us to try. You can't just say, I'm going to be a couch potato and then things will happen to me. No, you have to work hard. You have to struggle. You must. What is this life for? How long are you going to live for? How long am I going to live for? Maybe tomorrow I'm dead. And I'm going to go back to Allah and He's going to say, what did you do for me? Well, I prayed. Well, that was for you. What else did you do for humanity? There are women being raped today in Bahrain, and I'm saying nothing about it. Well, brother, you talk about this every week. Well, I will not stop. When there's oppression in the world, I won't stop saying it. You know what they're doing? They're going into schools, grabbing teachers, grabbing girls, students, and I don't even know what they're doing to the boys, because that's happening too, and we've seen that. It's happened all over the world. It happens in wherever there's war-torn territories, this horrible behavior of people, and they just lose all control of anything, and they just massacre and they kill and they take advantage of innocence. There's one sister, a month ago, her father was killed just for protesting. Her name is Fatima. I don't know if you've seen it on the internet. She goes on the internet and she stands up in front of thousands, and I don't know if she knows, but hundreds of thousands have watched her. And she says, I am proud of my father because he stood up for justice. Yes, he's dead, but we're not going to stop. And I'm going to stand up again. And when I saw that, I said, can you imagine the Prophet's daughter alive, watching the injustice that happened to her father? Some people say, oh, nothing happened to the Prophet. No, they were hypocrites. They were munafiqs. They were after him. They even tried to kill him just before Ghadir. There were 12 men who got around. They were about to kill him. All the plots, they never stopped. Even until the day he died, until his daughter died, until his grandsons died, even till today. 1400 years after he's gone, it's still there, the oppression. Against those who love the Prophet. Against those who love Ahlul-bayt. Well, this ayat, Allah is saying, brothers and sisters, you need to strive. Work hard. Some of you go to school, some of us go to school, we don't even try at all. And we get a B. Or 70, or whatever you call the numbers here. Try a little harder. Why not go for the hundreds? Why not try to be the best? Why can't you be in the forefront of this world, saying, I'm representing the Ahlul-bayt on this earth. I want to be the lovers of Ahlul-bayt, and I want to be the way they want me to be. So one brother asked me just this week, brother, you've been talking about Najib Balagha and how Imam Ali has prepared us to struggle in this world. You talked about Surah Hujurat. You talk about how we need to purify the self and then do what? Now what? What are the problems in society? What's the problem with the Muslim community? Come into these mosques. What's the biggest problem? Anyone can tell me? What's the biggest problem? They argue. Why do they argue?
Because they don't like each other.
They don't like each other. Why don't they like each other?
Because they're not from the same community.
Okay, that's
They're
right.
divided?
Huh? They're divided. Why? What makes people so stupid?
Arrogance.
Arrogance? I gave you the answer. The problem is they're stupid. They're ignorant. We are ignorant. We find, before the Prophet came to this world, there was a period of Jahiliyyah. Two families fought for like hundreds of years, for tens of years. For what? One camel's one camel crushed an ostrich egg of another community. An egg broke, and they fought for years. What are we doing? The guy ate my egg in the masjid. I don't like him. We're fighting for the same thing. What, did we not learn anything from the Prophet? Okay, I don't want to criticize because I'm the biggest fault. I'm looking at myself and saying, what am I doing to change? Well, we are stupid, so we need to educate myself. I need to learn. Okay, I'm ignorant of other communities. Okay, I may be racist. Well, go and live with them. Be with them. See how they are. I don't want to move to the South Bronx. Move to the South Bronx and see how great the people were. I told a lot of you when I first moved here many years ago, I moved to, it's like the South Bronx equivalent of Toronto, Jane and Finch, and I loved it. Why? Because there's nothing wrong with people of poverty. They are struggling like everybody else. Okay, they live in a cheap neighborhood, but so what? Government housing, so what? They are still human beings. And I loved them as my brothers, and they watched my back. They took care of me, and I said, I don't even get that from my own family. This is people from my neighborhood who are watching for me. So they knew something that I don't. They had knowledge. They have aql. They used it. So I'm going to talk how Sayyidah Fatima used her brains and her intelligence. What is also important is, if you look at this verse, the end of it, Allah says, so you need to strive hard to your Lord, striving until you meet Him. We are going back to Him. And Imam Ali has said about this passage, it means that you will attain inner peace when you, in this restless world of struggle, of problem. You know what problems people go through? The marriage problems that people go through, the family problems, the financial problems. We can't even imagine. I know you, Brother Kara, you're raising money for clothes to give, just clothe other brothers and sisters in Toronto of different nationalities, different backgrounds, different religions. Can you imagine people don't have money to buy clothes? How would you feel? It's horrible. What's causing this oppression? Because there's thieves and there's greed, and it's horrible that we don't care for each other. So, Sayyidah Fatima for us was a role model. She was oppressed. She fought oppression. They stole fadak. Everybody says, brother, fadak was a gift to her, fine. But why is she stuck for selfish? Selfish, she didn't take anything for herself. All the dates and all the goods that came from this land was always distributed to all the poor. She took care of those who fought in the armies. She took care of those who had no food, those who had no homes. It wasn't for her. It was for her to give. And they stole it from her. And she didn't stay quiet. She saw the oppression. She says, you did something wrong and I need my right. She went to court. You know that. And she fought. And the guy who was the judge is the one who stole her stuff. What is he going to say? Yeah, you're right. Here's your fadak back. Of course not. We know that. How could the judge be the same guy who is defending himself? It doesn't make sense. Anyway, so in the world of oppression, this is not something new. If you look at humanity, history, what's happened in the last 1400 years, what have we seen? What are we seeing in Bahrain today? What are we seeing in Libya today? In Syria today? What have we seen in the last 14 centuries? Blood. And the blood of those who love the Prophet. The blood shed. Look who was the Turk? Salahuddin. What did he do? He massacred the children, the followers of Ahlul-bayt. Massacred. I know people respect him a lot that he took back Jerusalem. But you don't know the oppression that he did to people. What about the Umayyads, the Abbasids, and today the Sauds? Everybody's oppressing those who love the Prophet Ahlul-bayt. And this is wrong. Now we need to wake up and say, how could we allow this to happen? How could we have allowed the killing of Sayyidah Zainab, for example? Somebody said she didn't get killed. She was oppressed until she was dead within a year or two after what happened in Karbala. Or the daughter of Sakina, the daughter of Imam Hussein. They killed her in the prisons of Yazid. How could we have ever allowed that to happen? It's because of our ignorance. If I don't know there's something wrong and I stay quiet about it, it's because I'm dumb. I'm not smart. So now, we know the Prophet has been given so much abundance, so much blessings. We say that Surah Kawthar. Who knows Surah Kawthar? Allah promised a beautiful gift to the Prophet. And the ayat of Surah Kawthar talks about Inna a'tainaka al-Kawthar Fasabbi labrika wanhar Inna shanaka wal-abtar. What does that mean? We have promised you an abundance. Who was that abundance, the beautiful gift that Allah gave? Say the Fatima Zahra. In a world where girls were treated like garbage, they would kill their children who were girls. Happens in China today. One child policy, kill the girl, keep the boy. It's happened again. After 1400 years, it's happening again. Well, the Prophet broke that and says, the lineage, my succession will happen through my daughter. And she was the example for us to live. The purity that she was. We don't even, if you go into the stories, what happened to her before she was born, and when she was conceived, and even when she was in the belly of her mother, Sayyidah Khadija, we'll cry. They oppressed Sayyidah Khadija so much. Bibi Khadija, we call her. They did not like her. They were jealous of her. She asked for any help? No. And she would be oppressed by the women of the community. We oppress other sisters who don't have the money for good clothes. Why? Because of our ignorance, our jealousy. I was speaking to one sister yesterday. She says, my cousin is oppressing me. She's against me. Why? I guess she's jealous. Why? Why are we like this? Ignorance. We're stupid. Anyway, in the belly of her mother's crying. And she, from the belly of her mother, she says, Mother, don't worry. Everything will be okay. In the belly of her mother. Can you imagine how great this woman is? Some people say, brother, you're telling me fairy tales. It didn't happen to what we call Sayyidah Amina? Yes. She should tell the world that the child inside me is talking to me. He's praying prayers of Allah. What about the baby in the mother of Bibi Maryam? What did Jesus do? What we say? She spoke. They say at the day of his birth, he spoke. No, even before that. It's nothing new when you talk about the prophets and the great humanity that ever lived. There is something special that they were given. So from the day she was conceived, in the belly of her mother, she was oppressed because she saw her mother being oppressed. When she was born on this earth, oppressed. When she died, oppressed. Her father was oppressed. Her husband was oppressed. Her children were oppressed. And did she stay quiet? No. Because some people say, women, you stay quiet in the back of the building, or in the other side of the hall, or in another part of this world. No. The women of Bahrain, they're being raped. Are they stopping? No. The poet that was killed, she gave her poetry to the world about the oppression, they killed her. This is fantastic. That she stood up. Okay, she died. Astaghfirullah. But she stood up fighting and died fighting. The women of today in the United States or Canada, they're begging for their rights and they're getting it. Just 100 years ago in the US, women couldn't vote. Some people say, this is a free country? Yeah, women couldn't even vote. You go to some parts of the world, in France, the women couldn't even go into the stock exchange. Women not allowed. Now the women are saying, I demand my rights. Very soon you'll see CEOs, they're already beginning, of companies, women. Why? They're demanding their rights, they're intelligent, they deserve it. But they need to have modesty. You need to follow the example of Sayyidah Zainab and Sayyidah Fatima. We need to follow the way they were. They were intelligent, but they knew that if, just give you an example. If I'm very intelligent, but then make me if I'm a woman. It's hard to tell, but okay, make me if I'm a woman. I'm dressed very attractive. Will the guy who's interviewing me question my intelligence or just stare at me? Most probably give me the job because of my looks. They'll ask a few dumb questions, but they're attracted. That's what they want. I was working in the corporate America, and I'm telling you, it's a lot about the facade of the outside. Then they hire these people who have no clue of what's happening, and the company doesn't care because they're getting their enjoyment. Is that the way you want to be respected? Of course not. Women don't want to be respected like that. They want to be respected for their intelligence, so then they dress modest, and their beauty's hidden. And for the world to say, okay, I'll give you your respect and your rights because you're intelligent. Your expression, the way you carry yourself, that's an example of a good human being. And that's why I'm giving you the job. That's more important. Okay, one amazing thing I was reading the other day is a person named Alexis Carrel. Anybody who knows who that is? He was a Nobel Peace Prize winner like almost 100 years ago, a French surgeon, and he said something quite unique. I've told some of you brothers this quote before, but listen to what he says. He said, wisdom is like the lights of a car, which show the way, and love is like the motor which makes it move. You get it? Wisdom are the lights of a car, and the love makes the engine move. Think of that, okay? He says, each is nothing without the other. A motor without lights is blind love. Dangerous, tragic, interferes with death. So if you have a car with no wisdom, but you have the love of Ahlul-bayt, and you have no brains, what are you going to do? You're going to crash. Because you don't see where you're going at night. And in this world of darkness, of evil, we don't know what's right and wrong. And so when we're going in this with the love of the Prophet, love of Allah, and we have no intelligence of wisdom, and so we don't see the light, we're going to crash. So going back to what that brother told me, brother, what are we going to do next? Let's start educating ourselves. Strive hard to learn. How many brothers go and study Quran during the week? How many sisters go and I see beautiful recitation. What is the meaning? I don't know. What is the name of the surah? I don't know. How many surahs in Quran? I don't know. What's your name? Oh, that I know. What does it mean? I don't know. So we're constantly saying, I don't know, I don't know. How many slaps do we need to get to say no next time? Someone asks, what does Muhammad mean? The most praised one? Yeah, oh, that sounds good. Hamd is Hamd, Muhammad. Yeah, you're right. What about Ali? The Most High? Fantastic. Zahra, splendor. See, we need to know what we say. We need to understand. So then when we see something wrong, we say, okay, now I understand. What they're doing to the children of Bahrain, I see what they're doing. What they're doing to the oppressed of America, I see it. Another point that's important is the sadness in our hearts is important too. So now you have intelligence, now you need to use your emotions. Some people say, brother, emotions are weak. People are weak if they're emotional. Well, emotions is what drives us. We don't realize what gives you motivation. It's not just the intellectual. I can talk to intellectuals at PhD level, maybe I can, but somebody can, and he's giving you all this verbiage, vocabulary that you don't even understand what he said, but it sounds nice. But then you bring the same person who says something very intelligent, but then puts emotion into it, and puts his heart into it. It will move people, even if it's in a foreign language. So it's important that we take the love of Sayyidah Fatima and the words that she said and make us move. Because the dreams that we have of Sayyidah Fatima makes the world move. Some people say, what happened? Give me an example. Show me proof. We talked last week about Rachel Corrie, who stood up against the oppression of Gaza and she was killed. We talked about Mother Teresa. Just go back to Iran, 1979. Who were the ones who helped the revolution? The women. With their garb of modesty, of the hijab, they went on the streets and they scared everybody who was against them. And they were being shot at, they didn't care. They stood for the example of Sayyidah Fatima, and they succeeded in having a revolution, and changing evil to good. Now people say, well brother, 30 years later there's still problems. Well, there's no perfect system, but we're going that direction. We're trying. Don't hurt someone for trying. Okay, this masjid, there's a lot of problems. At least you're trying. Strive. Oh, the masjid across the street, they don't come here. Well, today they're here. Or the masjid down the block, we don't talk. Talk. Strive, and you will see success. Another important Nobel Peace Prize winner. I'm not sure if there's a Nobel Peace Prize. There's a French revolutionary. A person named Reggie Debray. Have anybody heard of that person? Have you heard of the Sheikh from Cuba? Guevara? He was one of the persons who was with him, and he wrote a book called Revolution or something like that. He said something amazing. I said, these are non-Muslims, brother. Why are we taking knowledge from that? Brother, sister, use your brain. Even if you get knowledge from those who hate you, get it, gain it. Gain knowledge from the ant, from the bat, from the peacock, from the lotus, from flowers, from looking in the sky. Even when you flush the toilet, gain knowledge. Wherever you can, gain knowledge. He said something amazing. He said, eyes express truth more than the tongue. You say eyes. Some people say what you see can deceive you. He's talking something deeper. He said, a person who cries is amazing. Because the person who never cries and does not know how to cry, they lack the feeling of humaneness. He is a stone, a wild, dry spirit. We look at that and say, my God, the followers of Ahlul-bayt, we cry a lot. We love Ahlul-bayt. We cry for what happened to the Prophet. We cry for Sayyidah Zainab. We cry for Sayyidah Fatima. We cry for Imam Ali. We cry for the oppression, the children being killed around the world. Because we are following the truth. When you cry for the truth, it's reflected in tears. Crocodile's tears don't come out when you see the truth. Real tears come out when you see the truth. And it will make you cry. When you see what's happening to a child being raped or butchered, I mean, how could you even look? How could you even breathe? How could you just stand there and do nothing about it? Well, that's me. Because it's happening in the world and I'm doing nothing about it. Do you understand the human trafficking that's happening in the world? What they're doing, they're grabbing children and molesting and killing and raping. My God, we're living in the 21st century, there's slavery? Anyway, let's look at Sayyidah Zainab. Let's look at Sayyidah Fatima. Let's look at Ahlul-bayt. Let's look at Imam Ali, Imam Hassan, Imam Hussein. They were pure. There's a verse. Someone tell me what the Prophet did after he heard this verse. And we're going to give you a gift after. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. وَآتِ ذَا الْقُرْبَ حَقَّهُ. When the Prophet heard that, the ayat means, and give to the near kin its due. Give to your family what they are deserving, the haqq. When the Prophet heard that, he did something. What did he do? What did he do? Take a guess. What did the Prophet do for Sayyidah Fatima? Yes?
He married Imam Ali.
No. That happened, but that's not what the Prophet gave her as a gift. You know, Brother Jawad? Exactly, fadak. He gave her fadak, her due, from this ayat that he did that. It's because Allah told him to do that. Some people say it's not her right. It's Allah. Did the Prophet do anything of his own? He listened to whatever Allah told him to do. He was our example. How could he have made any mistakes? Of course not. He's a perfect human being. So he's giving a gift to Sayyidah Fatima. Why would we accept anyone stealing that? Of course not. So when we look at the traditions of Sayyidah Zahra, we see that she was the most beloved of the Prophet. And what did they do? They attacked her. They burned her house. They attacked her husband. They attacked their children. They killed her children. Who did that? Christians, Jews, Hindus? No, the Muslims. The so-called Muslims. The same ones in Bahrain are burning 50 Qurans, I heard. And they're raping so many. They demolished 29 masjids. This is Islam? We're laughing at Terry Jones. The Muslims are even worse. The ayat of purification. The Ahlul-bayt were pure. And the lovers of Ahlul-bayt, the family of Ahlul-bayt, they're all over the place. We know that. Those who are the family of the Prophet are living in this world. And they're living in Bahrain, and they're living in Saudi, and they're living in Canada. And they're being killed and oppressed. So it's not an accident. When the Prophet was dying, he took Sayyidah Zahra, and he gave her consolation, he gave her strength on bearing his death. Because he knew that his daughter could not handle losing her father. Not only losing her father, losing the Prophet of God. And the greatest of men that ever lived in this universe. And now she's at this point and she's breaking down. And he's consoling her and says, look, the strength of I'm dying. And you know that. But I want to give you some strength. Because of my family, you will be the next to come. You're giving the special news that you will join me before everybody else. And she smiled. But we know why she cried after. Because she knew the oppression that would happen after the Prophet's death. She knew what happened to her husband and the Imam of the time, Imam Ali. The right was given to him by Allah. In Ghadir, the announcement was there. It's all in the history books. I don't even want to go into that. We don't want to. We know the truth. We don't want to go into that. We want to know, what did she do? Sayyidah Fatima was the most beloved. She knew what was happening to her, first to her father. First tragedy, death. Then to her husband, Imam Ali alayhi salam. The oppression that he went through. They say that they even grabbed him and put chains on his neck and dragged him on the streets of Medina. Can you watch the Imam of the time that happening to him? We love Imam Mahdi so much. Can we allow that to happen? That they grab him and they try to kill him? No way! Forget him. Even another human being, another child, we will never allow that to happen. They dare to do that in front of us. Right now we talk as if we're strong. But I'm telling you, if your brothers or sisters are being abused in your communities and you do nothing, we're going to talk about that after. We are the ones like Yazid. I hear that there's some brothers here going after sisters and all this stuff, and there's a lot of crazy things happening. No one cares about morality. No one wants to live like Sayyidah Fatima. Why? They killed her. They butchered her family so she can represent and save Islam for us. Through her loins is the Ahlul-bayt and the Imam of the time, Imam Mahdi. And he's watching us and saying, you love my mother, my grandmother? You love her? Then live like her. He's watching us and saying, sisters, we leave the masjids, the first thing that comes off is our modesty, our clothes, because we want to assimilate to society. During the time of the Prophet, you know who were dressed very immodest? The slaves of the time. Because they didn't have the dignity, they didn't have the money, they didn't have the power. They didn't wear the scarf. Today, you know who dresses immodestly? The slaves of the time. Who are the slaves today? Those who are slaves of their own ego, of their own self. They're slaves of their desires, of people. They want to show to people, look, I'm pretty. In a few years, everything gets wrinkled. So let's cover with modesty and look humble. And so people respect us for our intelligence. Sayyidah Fatima was able to cut through all the propaganda. She saw the truth. She lived. She was the heart of the movement of Islam. She was always taking care of the Prophet when he would be hurt. Always there at his side. And then for her husband, she was always there for them. And so she saw the political turmoil of her time, and she saw the truth of what was happening, and she stood up against it and says, you're stealing the right that Allah's put on this earth. The Imam of the time, you're stealing his rights, and you're hurting my family. The family that the Prophet said that they're the purified ones. The Prophet has said, قُلْ أَسْأَلَكُمْ عَلَيْهِ أَجْرًا إِلَّا مَوَدَّةَ فِي الْقُرْبَى. He says, I don't ask anything from you. I'll give you my life, but you just do one thing for me. You love my family. That's all he wanted. And who told him to say that? Allah. It's not even from himself. Allah's telling him, say this to the world, that you love my family. But when we see what they did to her, his family, it's a shame. And it's happening today. The children of Imam Hassan, the children of Imam Hussein, they're being butchered in the world. And we're staying quiet. We need to love the family of Ahlul-bayt till today. The Imam of the time. We need to love him. We need to help him. We need to help Allah and do good. The first thing we need to do to help others is to learn and gain knowledge and stop being stupid and ignorant and foolish. Because all this racism and anger is coming from our own selfish desires. Because we don't have the intelligence that says, look, I want this car. Tomorrow it's gone. Tomorrow it's stolen. So why are we oppressing someone else to steal their money so that we can buy this car? Well, brother, I want a BMW. Well, brother, tomorrow it's gone. What are you going to do with it? They went after the house of Sayyidah Fatima, which was connected to the masjid. They burned it. And they said, this is the house of sorrows. Because what they did, she heard from the house. She said, even if Sayyidah Fatima was in there, he says, yes, go in there and burn it. And she heard who were the leaders saying that. And did she stay quiet? No, she came out and attacked with the words. She had the knowledge of Islam you can't even imagine. She's like the prophet of women, Sayyidat al-Nisa'il Alami, the leader of all the women of mankind, of the world, of the universe. She had the knowledge and she didn't stay quiet. And she tried. And she struggled. And she was sick. They say within 6 days after the Prophet died, she fell very ill. And she didn't live long. They say 75 to 95 days after the Prophet's death, she couldn't take it anymore and she died. So Fadak was confiscated from her, stolen. Just like in Bahrain, they're stealing the land. Justice, freedom, truth was imprisoned. It was defeated until the Imam of the time brings it back out. Can you imagine how long justice has been defeated? For how long the world has been suffering? Some people say, yeah, there's a lot of peace in the world. No, but where is the freedom and justice? It's never been there. People have been robbed over whole centuries, all these years. There's never been a time where you can say, okay, there's justice, everybody's treated fairly. Never. Why? Because it was stolen the day the Prophet died. So Sayyidah Fatima Imam Ali would walk in Medina, and they had a few handful of helpers. I talked about Salman, Abu Dar, Bilal Habashi, very few helpers. One day, Sayyidah Fatima asks Bilal, please, can you do the adhan for me? I want to hear the adhan during the time of my father. And he started, Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar. She couldn't take it. She started to cry. She fainted, and everybody was shocked. My God, did she die? And they went to her, and she woke up, and she says, finish the adhan. I love it. I remember my father. How many of us remember the Prophet? Sayyidah Fatima, she didn't stop. She said the Prophet went to the streets of Medina and preached. She did that. Some people say she only went to the courts and only fought at the courts. No, she went to people and says, do you know what you're doing? You're killing the religion of God. You're stealing the rights of the Prophet. You're killing my family. What are you doing? She went to people and told them, what are you doing? She didn't stay quiet. She said the truth. They didn't care. They didn't give a damn. They even hurt them. I mean, this is a sad story when you see a poor man, the Imam of the time, Imam Ali, and his wife, Sayyidah Fatima, and their little children. Imam Hassan was like 6, 7. Imam Hussein 6, Sayyidah Zainab 5, Kulthum was like 3 or 4. These little children going out and saying, this is wrong. Even they say, one time the Caliph of the time was on the mimbar. Imam Hassan and Imam Hussein grabbed him and says, get off the mimbar, get off and give the right back to my father. This is a child saying this. Do we have the guts to say that to our elders when they do something wrong? No, whatever you say, and we accept the abuse. No, if we're followers of Sayyidah Zainab, followers of Sayyidah Fatima, followers of Imam Ali, Imam Hassan, followers of the Prophet, we'll fight for justice in this world. Some people say, Ya Ali, if you at the time of Saqifa came out and said a little bit and fought for your rights, we would have elected you. He says, you want me to abandon the Prophet and not bury him? I was burying him and you were stealing the rights of God on this earth. They planned this game ahead of time. We know that. And by us allowing it to happen, we're the criminals. You know, they say the accomplice on the side who does nothing, you're an accomplice. Well, I didn't do anything. I didn't say anything. Well, that means you're an accomplice. And we're wrong. They were attacking. They were butchering. They attacked the house of Imam Ali. They imprisoned. They did so much to destroy the spirit of Islam, but they couldn't. No matter how hard they tried, they couldn't. So the 3rd of Jamad al-Thani we know is today. We know the last words of Sayyidah Fatima to her family. She bid farewell to Imam Ali. And it was how difficult. I don't know, can you imagine the greatest woman on earth? First you lost the greatest man on earth, the Prophet. Then you lose your wife, the greatest woman on this earth, the daughter of the Prophet. And she's saying goodbye to you. And she's taking the baby and the children and saying goodbye to them for the last time. The house, they heard a screech, a scream. Finally, Sayyidah Fatima closed her eyes to this world and went back to her beloved, the Prophet. the candle of fire of sorrow is extinguished in the house of Imam Ali. And Imam Ali remains alone with his children, and they didn't leave him. Imam Ali was requested by Sayyidah Fatima to bury her at night. Don't let the oppressors who've stolen your right to be at my grave, don't let them know where I am. Do you know till today, 1400 years later, we don't know where she's buried? Is she in the house where the Prophet is buried? In the grave of the Prophet? Is she in Jannat al-Baqi? I have no clue. No one here knows. We don't know. Why? Because there would be oppression like happened in Iraq. What happened? They blew up the grave of Imam Hassan al-Askari, Imam Ali al-Naqi. How could we allow that? It's happened. Till today, they would not leave her grave. And we know that. So Imam Ali went to the grave of the Prophet. And he says, As-salamu alayk ya Rasulullah. He said, your daughter has left me and she left this world in haste to join you. He says, my patience and my ability has weakened me because I'm missing you, ya Rasulullah. He says, but how can I seek patience with such terrible misfortune by missing you? I placed you in the grave, but you still exist in my heart. He's telling the Prophet, Ya Rasulullah, I put you in the grave, but you've never left my heart. I love you so much. We are all from Allah. Inna lillahi wa inna ilayhi raji'un. He says, well, my sorrow is eternal, and my nights are sleepless until Allah takes me to the same home in which you are now. He remained silent for a few minutes. He was exhausted of a whole lifetime. And then he took a deep breath and he gives up a part of his existence when he's lost, Sayyidah Fatima. And there's a very beautiful thing, I don't know if you've seen it. If you get a chance, go on YouTube and look at the last words of Lady Fatima. In the end, there's a little khutbah of Imam Ali from Najib al-Agha. He said, a flower nipped in the bud. It was from paradise, and it went back to paradise. But it has left its fragrance in my mind. He's talking about Bibi Fatima, Sayyidah Fatima. He says, this beautiful flower, who was from paradise, went back to paradise. And in my heart, I still miss her so much. We today, 1400 years later, we miss her so much. And we cannot stand the oppression that she went through. But what does she want from us? She wants us to stand up and become intelligent. Get an education. Learn. Study. And then do something about these problems of the world. Become a leader. Become successful. Some people want to be leaders so they become rich or famous. Forget about that. Become a leader. What is a leader? You care for someone else. You're given the right, the fiduciary responsibility of taking somebody, take care of somebody. That's what a leader is. That you want to help people. Not that you get the money and the power and the success. No, that's nothing. That's garbage. You remember when he said, to me, the leadership is like the boogers or the water on the nose of a goat. It didn't mean anything to him, but he needed to take care of the people. Well, we need to start taking care of the people too. Of ourselves, our mothers, our sisters,